Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. This is the preview to the Men's World Championships 2021. Now, we've talked about the top 10 teams, top 7 actually, and we've talked about the 5-star, 6 5-star favorites, along with Caleb Ewan, my dark horse. Today, I wake up and I read in Cycling News online that Eddy Merckx don't believe that the Belgian team should bring Remco Evenepoel. And I'm here to agree with them. In spirit, I understand where it's coming from. But I'm going to give you a flip side, play devil's advocates here, because Remco Evenepoel is only 21 years old, remember. So Eddy Merckx is calling Remco Evenepoel selfish. He might be right. Eddy Merckx might have the inside communications with all the Belgian guys and have figured out stuff that I just can't see from over here in America. Now, if Eddy Merckx is talking to his friends, to the teams out there, and they're all saying, hey, Remco Evenepoel tried to win the Olympic road race by going up the road and attacking before the last climb, which left Wout van Aert isolated and all alone, instead of just saving his legs, riding to that final climb at the Olympic road race, and then pacing Wout van Aert all the way up the climb, and then pacing him down the finish, and he wins a gold medal. So, if Eddy Merckx has inside information about Remco Evenepoel being selfish, I agree with you, Eddy. Remco Evenepoel should stay home, should watch it on television like I'm going to do, or go over there and jump out on the course and watch him go live as they come by with many of the circuits there on the finishing loops of the World Championships. But, now devil's advocate, let's flip the coin over, because he's only 21 years old. I read the responses from Remco Evenepoel about Eddy Merckx on the Cycling News, and what I read in his response just backs up what I believe I've been seeing and watching from Remco Evenepoel. He's just a kid who doesn't know how to race his bike. Now let me be clear. I didn't know how to race my bike at 21 years old. I didn't know how to race it at 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. It wasn't until I was about 29, maybe 30 years old that I started figuring out some of the tactics in bike racing, because the first few years that I spent in Europe, I was so far at the back, I didn't know what was going on. The years before that, when I was racing in the U.S., and I'm talking 1996, 97, those years right before I went over to France in 1997, those earlier years, I was so strong in the U.S., I didn't have to know tactics. I just jumped across to the brake when I saw it establishing, went to the front, drove the brake, rode everyone off the wheel, and won the race, just like we see Remco Evenepoel doing. Now, another way to back up Remco Evenepoel just not knowing how to race. We look at the European Road Race Championships when he crosses the line, pulling Sonny Colbrelli, the Italian rider, all the way to the finish and hand delivering him a gold medal at the European Championships. And then Remco Evenepoel flipping him off afterwards because he was upset and frustrated that Sonny Colbrelli never really took a pull the whole time on the final 2 laps. But I'm here to tell you, Remco Evenepoel, if that bothered you, why don't we go back to about a month ago? We'll rewind the tape, go back to a month ago, and we'll go to the Brussels Classic. There, they're in a breakaway with 7 riders, under 20 kilometers to go. The lead motorcycle camera is turning right, which is the wrong way on the course. There's one sign, we'll see it, I'll show you in the picture. There's one sign showing you, a direction sign that's showing you that the riders are supposed to go left, but when they come down to that final turn down there, T-turn, where you have to go left or right, there's 2 signs showing the camera motorcycle that he needs to go right. So 5 of the riders go right. Remco Evenepoel and one other rider, I believe it was Ames de Hent, went left and then just throttled it all the way to the line. Then Remco Evenepoel jumped Ames with about 10 or 11 kilometers from the finish line and soloed it all the way into the line. So when we look at Remco Evenepoel, I think we're just looking at a kid that just hasn't really realized the difference between right and wrong and the right tactics and that kind of stuff. Because he complains about Sonny Colbrelli sitting on him all the way to the finish and then getting beat. But at the same point in time, a couple weeks before that at the Brussels Classics, when guys make the wrong turn, accidentally, the sign was shown there that they're supposed to go right. So they followed the road signs. They all went right. Remco Evenepoel went left. And what did he do? It wasn't like he was a good citizen and sat up and like, hey, I'm a great gentleman here. I'm going to back off. I'm going to wait for these other 4 or 5 riders that just went right on the wrong way direction of the course and wait for them to get back on. And I want to win this race fair and square. No way. Steps on the throttle, okay? Steps on the throttle and wins it. I don't have any problem with him stepping on the throttle. I have a problem with him stepping on the throttle, then going to the European Road Championships and flipping off Sonny Cabrelli, who doesn't step on the throttle. So there's the differences. We're 21 years old though. Whenever you're looking at young kids, I've gone through many. I got 4 of my own kids, got 3 of them that 2 of them went through their teens, one's that's just about ready to finish the teens. And I can tell you, they see things differently. They see things the way that it affects them, not necessarily the way everybody in the world would see it from different angles, like you have to see the real world. So when I see Remco Evenepoel, unless, of course, Eddy Merckx has got that inside information telling him that he's selfish, when I see Remco Evenepoel, I see a kid that just doesn't exactly know how to bike race right now, and he shouldn't know how to bike race. But somebody should tell him how to bike race. So in the response, Remco Evenepoel says to Eddy Merckx, he starts detailing the Belgian plans. Remco Evenepoel talks about the only person on the team right now, the only rider on the team that they know the plans of are Tim de Klerk, because he's going to get on the front and ride. That's craziness. If someone from the Belgian national team hasn't already talked to Remco Evenepoel about what the plans are for Sunday's race, then that's absolutely ridiculous. And what happens sometimes when you're over there at the European field and you have a star rider like Remco Evenepoel, a lot of times people are afraid to confront them and afraid to say, hey, this is what needs to happen, because Remco Evenepoel might be deciding who the DS's job is in the future if Remco Evenepoel turns into the next Eddy Merckx. We all know it's a possibility, right? He's a fabulous rider and incredibly on form. But Remco Evenepoel, I'll tell you right now the Belgian plans, because they're simple and as easy, and I don't need a crystal ball to do it. You start the 268-kilometer road race with the Belgian team on the front with the favorite of Wout van Aert. You look at Wout van Aert as a pure sprinter. This is the problem that the world of cycling has. A lot of times when you get a rider like Wout van Aert or Peter Sagan, someone like those riders, they forget to think of them as pure sprinters. When the race starts, you think as Wout van Aert as a pure sprinter, and you need to get him to 200 meters to go. That is your only plan. You don't need to think about, like you said in the article, how you're going to do your own race at the beginning and then work for Wout van Aert at the end, but there could always be a plan B. There is no plan B. Wout van Aert is the plan A, Remco Evenepoel. This course is not designed great for you. This is a Wout van Aert designed course for the Belgians to win and dominate. So you ride at the beginning as he's a pure sprinter with the plan to get him to 200 meters to go and win the race. Now, that doesn't always work out that way, right? But at no point in time, Remco Evenepoel, are you allowed to jump away and start following breaks and getting Wout van Aert isolated in the back alone. Once the number 1 rule is broken, now you have to rely on other teams to start doing the work. So if Wout van Aert gets isolated, he has to rely on other teams to close that gap. I know a lot of fans, a lot of viewers of my show here, when you guys say, hey, Remco Evenepoel can get in the front group, and then they don't have to chase behind, some other team has to chase. You're right, some other team should chase, but that doesn't always happen. The other teams could have small numbers. The other teams could be fatigued. The other teams just might not want to pull Wout van Aert up the road because they know no one can beat him. So that's why you always stay with Wout van Aert. I'll give you one good example from the 2020 Tour de France. Bora Hansgrohe did an exceptional job at the 2020 Tour de France to destroy the whole peloton at the Tour de France of all the sprinters and hard fast men, to leave Peter Sagan with a chance of gaining maximum green points jerseys and to win the stage. Problem was they didn't finish the plan, and they're doing the kind of tactic with Bora Hansgrohe that Remco Evenepoel is talking about doing. You don't want to do the Bora Hansgrohe tactic. They destroyed the field. They got it down to a select group of 30, maybe 40 riders. But Bora Hansgrohe were down to just 3 riders. We're talking Peter Sagan, it was Lennart Kemna, and I believe Max Schachmann was there. Now, Lennart Kemna and Max Schachmann's job at that Tour de France for Bora Hansgrohe's Peter Sagan should have been to set pace at the front, keep it together, let attacks go, bring the attacks back, and get Peter Sagan all the way to 200 meters to go. Remco Evenepoel, that is your job. That is your only job. I'm telling you right now, I don't need a crystal ball. So when I'm reading your comments on Cycling News, that tells me you don't know exactly what to do on Sunday, which tells me that probably the Belgium DS hasn't told you what your job is going to be, and he should have. So I'm here to tell you, you got to ride to 200 meters. That is your sole job. You want to get Wout van Aert as close to the finish line as you possibly can. Wout van Aert's job is simple. Stay with the Belgium guys, always at the front. When you're riding these classics, you don't want to start these lefts and right turns when they're going up 11% climbs to a sharp, steep climb after a hard right or left turn. You don't want to start at the back. When the racing's full gas, if you start at the back, you have to come to a complete stop and then all of a sudden chase him back on. So Team Belgium, Remco Evenepoel, when you're talking about doing your own race for the first half of the World Championships, I'm telling you, you're wrong. Your job is always to be up there with Tim de Klerk and on the Belgium national team's wheel right then at that moment, so that you could start every climb at the front so you can be rested. And so when we get into the hard part of the race, over 200 kilometers into the race, that's when this race is going to get exciting, because we all know the Danes are going to start lighting things up left and right. Wout van Aert's easy tactic. You stay with your team for as long as possible. Your team always stays with you until they blow up. Once they blow up, once Remco Evenepoel does his last absolute bit of energy for you, that's when you got to start thinking about what attacks I have to follow. If I'm not at 200 meters to go and I'm Wout van Aert starting my sprint, and let's say Remco Evenepoel did an amazing pull, was covering all the Danish attacks and just covering every epic rider and five-star rider out there and bringing them back. Once Remco Evenepoel blows and Wout van Aert is isolated, that's when he has either the green light to start following attacks, or he's got to pick one sprinter team that's back there. Maybe the Italians still have some numbers back there for Sonny Cabrelli. Maybe Caleb Ewan is riding absolutely fantastic and the Australian team has formed around him. Now you'd have Team Australia up there trying to bring Caleb Ewan to 200 meters because he's a sprinter. And then you would have the Italian team trying to bring Sonny Cabrelli to 200 meters because he's a pure sprinter. But the Belgium team's all worn out. So Wout van Aert has to pick those two teams to stay with if they have any kind of numbers left and he's isolated. Or Wout van Aert, we all know, if you're under 30K to go, under 20K to go, you're isolated, the favorites are going up the road. I don't need to tell Wout van Aert, light that stuff up, win this race solo, right? Because we all know Wout van Aert can win solo. But you get him to 200 meters to go, you probably win that way too. Got to be the hands-on best favorite to win at 200 meters to go after 270 kilometers of racing. That's my pick for the World Championships. Wout van Aert, Belgium team, don't need a crystal ball. Remco Evenepoel, it's very easy to see what your job is come Sunday, and it is not to look after yourself for the first half of the race, and it is not to cover moves at the end of the race. Your job is to stay with Wout van Aert, and do not break the number one rule on the butterfly effect, and I'm going to extend the number one rule here to Beyond the Coverage too, and I'll extend it to any other show I'm on, because the number one rule should never be broken when you have Wout van Aert on the team. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. I'll see you for tomorrow's edition of the Butterfly Effect for the Women's World Championships. Like and subscribe. See you guys real soon.